Welcome to the stream. Tonight we're going to be working on Factorio oil blueprints. I completely forgot about them in the last stream. Otherwise we could have done them then. But we spent time on the new sort of mini mall for the MMO, so that was good. I was going to say you won't miss a whole lot. Don't worry about me. Alrighty, so the first oil blueprint is pretty straightforward. That is the oil refineries themselves. I'm going to blueprint it with advanced oil processing selected. Mostly because, no, actually I won't. I'll blueprint it with basic because of the, because I can't hook the pipes up for water anyway, or it'll confuse the tar out of the new features. So for oil, all we do is line up 10 refineries next to each other. I like to put my power poles on the outside too. I'm just that person. Okay, and then that's 2. And that's 10. That's the simple one. Then we take that, we make a copy of it, and we make one to stamp over top of it for advanced oil processing. We'll do the same thing as before and copy paste this blueprint over top. So that's the second one. Also a very easy blueprint to do because it's almost the same. So by the way, the correct sort of balanced oil ratios in Factorio 0.17 is 10 oil refineries to 1, let me put it down here because I'm going to build the rest of them up there, to 1 chemical plant cracking heavy oil to light oil, to 7 chemical plants cracking light oil to petroleum. Now we're going to obviously also set up some blueprints for making salad fuel because we may need that for blue science, depending if we do it within the blue science array or if we built in the salad fuel. And we're also going to need it in the we're also going to need it to make the salad or the rocket fuel for the rocket itself. So we'll first start with the a combination of lubricant, which just requires heavy oil. I'm going to do 4 of those. That should be more than enough for our game this time around. And then after that will be cracking of heavy oil into light oil. I like to do these in the same line because I can use a pump here, somewhere, back here. I can put a pump here, and then I should pin these pipes to the, I did that wrong. And I can just run the solid fuel like this, and then, or the heavy oil, I mean, like this, and then I can weave it to cover this portion here. Meanwhile, I can weave the water in like this. And I see that I already made a small mistake. And then I should have separated these two out. I'm going to move these this way because I lined it up. Because I need room for power poles. And then here I'm just going to make this go up to the next line, and I'll put the light oil there. So the plan would be to have some sort of a fluid bus coming upside. They did. So in 0.16 it was 8 refineries to 1 heavy to light cracking to 7, and I think it's because of actually I don't know why it changed. Why did it change? Anyways, now it's 10 advanced refineries to 1 to 7. Actually, the old ratio was like 25 to 3 to 21, I think. But most people, at least to start the game, did 8, 1, 7. But now it's an even 10, which is handy. They didn't change the amount of oil that's being consumed. It must be something in the cracking that got changed. Some ratio in the cracking. I'm not positive where that ratio changed at. We don't need room for beacons here, which is convenient because that's just a lot of extra work for not a lot of benefit. But the next cracking is light to heavy. And I made them too close by 1. Yeah, I mean, until you get to the sort of end game scenario, the difference in the ratio is probably not gonna be a huge negative effect. But it doesn't hurt. So these numbers are, like I said before, 10, 1, and 7. I did 4 of these because I'm kind of planning on us needing about 40 refineries toward the end. Whether we actually need that many or not doesn't really matter, because we're going to end up controlling everything with a pump anyway. And actually I need to add a pump in here to handle the control of the light oil going into the cracking. 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'm going to do 2 rows of 14. And that's mostly just because I don't want this to be unwieldy, or I'm gonna suggest, I should say, 2 rows of 14. And that's because I just don't want this to be too unwieldy long. Still can't draw straight lines, guys. And then we can just double it once we have the other 2 sets of oil refineries. So the next thing, and actually I should plan on including a power pole, a big power pole in here with every blueprint, because can I go that far? No. Because we want to be able to hook these up to the be be able to hook these up to the pumps so that we can set the rules. I'm going to do simple rules here. Oh, hey Catherine. Hey Malarian. Welcome. I'm going to do simple rules of just greater than 22,000 on the heavy oil to light oil cracking. So that way whenever lubricant is over 22,000, we start cracking. And then here, this rule will be whenever heavy oil is over also 22,000. And that just makes sure that as soon as we have, so what we're going to do is we're going to wire a tank. I lost the tank. We're going to wire a tank to these power poles in our fluid bus. And then as this tank fills up with, say, light oil, this pump's going to turn on and start cracking it into petroleum gas. And the same thing will happen with the tank for lubricant and the tank for heavy oil. I'm not measuring against the heavy oil. For this, when I do the solid fuel blueprint, I will measure the heavy oil so that we make sure that if we get too full on heavy oil, we just go ahead and turn it into, like if the cracking can't keep up, we go ahead and turn it into solid fuel. That way oil doesn't get backed up completely. So we'll need one of these. Eventually we need 4 of these, which will support, or one of these will support. Once we have 4 of these, we'll need 2 full of these arrays. And we could do a mirror probably and do the pipe. These only output 20 petroleum, so that's 60 of these machines per pipe. That's pretty convenient. Yep, I'm working towards plastic. I'm working towards all 3 as I work my way north here. I usually do batteries in the bus just so that we can, because I think it's easier to, I don't know, it really doesn't matter. I just always do batteries in the bus. It doesn't really matter. Either we have to pipe sulfuric acid there for the blue circuits anyway, and usually there's enough iron and copper to where it's already on the bus instead of belting it down into the oil area, wherever that is. I mean, we will need iron for the oh yeah, no problem. We will need iron for the sulfuric acid. But that's only iron instead of doing both iron and copper. So that takes care of our cracking needs. And now we'll move on to the plastic. So I did the math earlier. 7.5 plastic. Actually, I can show you the math. 7.5 plastic making chemical plants are enough for 1 full yellow belt, 15 per second. So we're going to do 8, and we're going to do a balancer on it. We can do these in pairs to save a little bit of space, I guess, on the bus. There's a couple different ways to do this. You can do... Hello, Infantryman. Welcome. You can do an array like this, and then we're going to insert some coal. Plastic requires coal and petroleum gas. We're going to insert some coal here. And then on the output side, we'll have the plastic. 8, so let's do this, put these in the center. So that's enough for 1 yellow belt. What I will always add here is a balancer to the new sort of simple balancers, just to push everything to the inside of the belt. We'll need eventually, I think, well, how many plastic did I say earlier? Does anyone remember? We'll need 4 or 5 yellow belts, so we're going to need 5 of these eventually. So a little bit. But they can just be stacked. I'll add a pump here as well. And a power pole. And a red circuit wire. And usually these, I just make sure that the petroleum gas is over 1000. And that's only because of the next array, which is sulfuric acid. You always kind of want your plastic and sulfuric acid to share the petroleum gas as much as possible. That way you don't run low of anything. So I always put in a pump on each one with just a low amount. That way the pumps all kick on at the same time and all inject, if petroleum gas is low, and all inject the petroleum gas into both arrays, and then you don't starve out one for the other, and you kind of are making a little bit of each. So in a chemical plant, we make sulfur crystals, 2 per second, and the sulfuric acid consumes 5 per second. So that means that 2 sulfuric acid plants are a perfect ratio with 5 sulfur crystal plants, but that ratio is not hard to build, but unnecessarily complicated to build. So I like the simple ratio, which is 2 to 1. Just do that like this, and it gets you enough that it's good enough for producing enough sulfuric acid. So we need once again, some pipes for, let me put these here actually. Let's do it like this. That looks fancy. And I didn't actually look at how much of the sulfuric acid we're going to need. This produces 50 per second. The batteries use very little. The blue circuits use very little as well. So I think I'm going to just build a double array of these. Just like, kind of just like how we did. Oh, I missed that. Kind of like how we did the lube and the cracking here. And then we'll just duplicate this whole array if we have to. Nope. And actually this one could just be extended further out to 4 of these. We don't even have to build another row for these because it's such a small array. And that'll take us out to the fluid bus again for the sulfuric acid. I need to copy this condition so that this pump also kicks on at 1000 petroleum, so that again those two are shared. And the other pieces we need are solid fuel. Solid fuel is really easy to build. You just make chemical plants, put them in pairs, and you run a pipe down the length of it. And then we'll put a pump in here, and a power pole. I know. I'm doing all 3 to protect against backups. So this one is I want this one to only run at the very last possible minute. So I'm gonna do I've seen where for some reason 24Ks never actually hit. So I'm gonna just do do 22,000 again here. If this ever gets hit, it'll be somewhat. Wait a minute. Yeah, it'll be somewhat of a miracle because once the lubricant's done with the heavy oil, and is full, then we move on to the heavy oil to light oil cracking, which runs, otherwise will run all the time. So the only time this won't run is if the light oil is backed up, or if the heavy oil is starved out. If the light oil gets backed up, though, we don't necessarily want to have the entire oil system get backed up. So I like to do a small, and this 4 should be more than enough, a small cracking array or a small solid fuel array for heavy oil, just to be safe. And then just tie it into my my oil or my solid fuel belt, and if it's needed, it's needed. If it's not, it's not. It never runs. We wasted 4 chemical plants, 4 inserters, and a handful of pipes, and a few other odds and ends. We didn't waste much at all. I'm not going to balance it there. I'm just going to balance it here. Just do a simple side-to-side balancer here, or a simple lane balancer here, just to make sure that it comes out balanced. Because this is, if this gets any petroleum at all, it's going to be very imbalanced anyway. It'll only kick one machine or 2 machines on, and inevitably it'll kick 2 of them on the same end. So I'm not going to bother with a balancer halfway. So that concept can be easily repeated here for... Oh, I know, you don't like mixing fluids. Alright, I should have known better, right? Light oil to solid fuel. This one we're going to need to build a lot more of, because this will be our primary solid fuel. And that's because 10 light oil become a solid fuel, 20 heavy oil become a solid fuel, and 20 petroleum gas become a solid fuel. If you look at the cracking ratios, 40 heavy oil become 30 light oil. So there's already a small benefit to using light oil here, and 30 light oil become 20 petroleum gas, so there's also a benefit there. And you just need the petroleum gas so much for the plastic and for the sulfur that, you know what, I forgot something, guys. I forgot the iron belt. We need a belt of iron coming in here. Sidebar. Okay. So, we need the petroleum gas so much that if you ever back up on it, it's because you're not actually using anything in the base. So basically, you don't want you don't really want to use it for cracking. But I like to do the same kind of array as this for the petroleum gas. But for now, we're working on light oil. So let's do a lot of these. I think I'll do like 16 per row. 16 times 10 is only 160 every 2 seconds, so that's not even a whole pipe. And it's going to output a solid fuel every 2 seconds, so we could really handle 30 of these on a belt. In fact, we could almost do a mirror of this on the other side of the belt, and still only back the belt up a little bit. In fact, I will. That's actually not a bad idea, because we're going to need a ton of this cracking anyways. So we might as well just plan for it. Not cracking, solid fuel. This... Sorry, let me line my power poles up before I... Actually, I probably only need one. Let's do that. This pump, I usually try to wire to a belt. In this case, that's going to be somewhat more complicated because we're doing this kind of on demand. We're doing this in an MMO, and there's a bunch of people working on all their everything. So I don't think I want to do this in. I don't know if that I want to do the solid fuel any limitations at all. We'll just let the belt back up and make that the limitation, but we'll use the pumps to keep a balance. I don't know if anybody else has any other opinions on that. I suppose we could. Hey, Sydney. I suppose we could do. We could do something with measuring the light oil or measuring the petroleum, just to make sure that we're not starving out the petroleum to make solid fuel. But I think it'll be okay. Just not controlling those pumps. So then the final array is another one of these. I'm purposely not copying the pipes because I want to change the recipe. Trim those off too. And the same kind of concept here with the filter on whenever, just like this one is whenever the heavy oil is over 22K, this one will be whenever the petroleum gas is over 22K. And again, that's just in case we get backed up on petroleum gas, which never happens. And we need to vent it off somehow. I think I'll put a balancer here on this just to be sort of safe. It's probably not necessary, probably too redundant, but just to be sort of safe, I'll put a balancer there. If we see which the light to solid fuel being an issue, if so, yeah, we can come up with something kind of on the fly to help balance it out. But like I said, I usually like to either tie it to a belt, measuring the solid fuel that's going out of the system, or I like to tie it to a the petroleum gas, just to make sure we're not starving out the petroleum gas for the sake of solid fuel. In the end, it probably doesn't horribly matter, because we'll just put down more refineries, pipe in more oil, and call it a day. I think that's all of the blueprints we need. What I should do here is just like we did do with the science blueprints, is put down some markers for the input lines. This one is iron. This one is coal. Just to help folks out during the time. So unfortunately, that was all that I had planned for the stream today. We did go longer than I intended the other couple of times, so I could call it here at 30 minutes. I could do a quick overview preview of the series that I was intending on starting, unless someone has another suggestion for what else to do for oil area blueprints. The other thing that I sort of thought of is I right justified all of these, so that kind of implies a right side bus, fluid bus. So I guess I could do mirror options for the left side, but we can probably just build it whichever way, and as long as we're consistent, it doesn't really matter. Do we have red belts? Red inserters? I'm going to grab a quick blueprint of this. There it is. Just of the whole thing. I'll slice it up later. Yeah, I think we're just going to use sort of the standard. I can pull that one up and we can talk about it, though. Okay, now I can clear these guys out. We talked about last time using the green circuits build, which is this green circuit build. And I assumed you were planning on using this red circuit build, which will take in a full belt of plastic and green circuits and 2 full belts of copper. And then it's extendable. That's, wow, I just forgot the name of it. That is, jeez. That is bottleneck. Yes, bottleneck. I just like using it when I'm doing blueprint, especially when I'm feeding in blueprints or feeding materials into blueprints, just so that I can make sure that I'm not starving anything out, and in some cases make sure that machines aren't sitting idle that shouldn't be. So this is extended out to, so this will produce this could produce up to 1 full belt of red circuits, but it actually can't. Let's see, we want 1 yellow belt. We want blue factories. Yeah, this requires twice as much. So actually, this can only produce a half a belt, 7.5, before we run out of plastic and green circuits at the end, with only a yellow belt feeding each of them. Similarly, this actually only requires 1 yellow belt of copper. That's for both sides combined. So you'll see that half of each belt doesn't actually ever get used. But we can extend this out 10 and 60, and in each block there are 2 and 12. So 5 of these blocks together will make 1/2 belt of, and that's the block ending before that. So this is a second block. But 5 of these blocks together will make 1/2 of a yellow belt of red circuits. Yeah, we could. Catherine said she wanted to try and avoid using any red belts at all, just because of the, or just to plan to not use any red belts, just to avoid people needing or doing crazy upgrading. So the plan is to just focus only on yellow belts. And we can take this entire array once there's 5 of these stacked up and add another one. And even on the bus, we should actually probably just plan on having space for 2. And we could even honestly do something like this, where we, make sure I do this right, that, I do another one just for fun. Instead of outputting it to this side, we output it to the other side and merge the 2 together. Just have the space planned right away. Something like this. Where am I at? There I am. Merge, merge, merge. Balance, balance. One red belt. Yeah, they're created locally for the blue science, but they're not created locally for the for the rocket, nor for the blue circuits. So we'll need quite a bit. We need almost, for science, not including what's in blue science, we'll need almost two full, well, about 1.5 full yellow belts of red circuits, just for science. And the blue circuit build only has... Oh, I lost the blue science build. The blue science build only has... let's see. Alright. 1, 2, 3 blocks like this. So that's less than a half a belt. So we're definitely going to need a whole belt worth of circuits. Yeah, you could. You could double those up. The good thing is, since the inserters are all kind of alternating, when you run this off of the bus, this belt, the inside would only really get used, or primarily get used, but then this belt, the inside, but the left side of this belt will get primarily used, and the right side of this belt will get primarily used. So, in the end, this becomes one belt, and it sort of balances itself out off of the bus. And the same thing with, obviously, the other one. So, merging the two, or balancing the two, it kind of works. I don't know that it's totally necessary. I think I will blueprint this piece here as the sort of stub piece for... I want these first two power poles here also on each side, but I don't want these machines nor these inserters. And I want those because these first inserters here don't actually have power otherwise. So MMO red science red circuits base, and that'll give us one full yellow belt of red circuits. I didn't lose that, did I? There it is. Okay, good. Red circuits times 2. There we go. That looks fancy. So I think that might be a good idea for us. And then beyond that, we have Catherine Sky's robot assembly, which I think will work fine here. It's not going to produce a lot of robots, but we're mostly going to use them for some late game construction, I guess, and then supplying the satellite assembler. So unless people are stealing the bots out of the system for their own personal roboports, we should be okay with, I think, with this many. Also, Catherine Sky's battery assembler has 12 machines, which means batteries, compute by factory, 12. That produces 5 of those would produce 1 belt of batteries. Oh, no problem, Kelsey. So we're going to want to extend this, but you always end up anyway. Oh, and one of these uses 60 sulfuric acid per second, so that's almost the equivalent of, I deleted them, that's right. That's almost the equivalent of one, I don't have them in there, they're over here. One of these, or one half of that sulfuric acid assembly. So we are going to need to extend that. So maybe when I slice these up, maybe I'll double that, just so that we have a little bit more sulfuric acid able to be made. So yeah, Kelsey, you missed some of the oil, probably solid fuel, mostly, and then we started talking about circuits and other blueprints we need. Here is this blue circuits array. It's 24 machines, right? I think that's what it said. So it produces blue circuits, machines, 24. It produces 1.8 blue circuits per second, which is almost enough for science. But we do have blue circuits inside of yellow science for yellow science, and there's blue circuits only as yellow science. So, and then the rocket's going to need just a little bit more than that as well, so that's probably enough for the rocket, at least to start with. We can expand it after if we keep playing. So I think that'll work for sort of the other bus arrays. I'll put those. Maybe I'll put all these together in a book and just share that, and we'll just have that book shared for everyone who's able to place blueprints. I think that might actually be it now. I can't think of necessarily anything else. Probably won't do modules right away, and at that point we can build more. Huh. It's an old blueprint. What other blueprints do I have in here? I'm not going to be the one to worry about trains and train stations. If we end up training stuff in, we can kind of work on that, I think, on the fly. I'll probably also throw some of the basic smelting arrays in that book, or maybe a couple different books, maybe one for science and then one for others, just to sort of not have it be too overwhelming to everyone. But yeah, I think the only other thing we could potentially include in the books is something like this, which is what I like to do at the very beginning of the game, and that's to have a small assembler making belts and green circuits before we kind of get them all up and running. Just feed it iron, feed it copper, and out spits the belts and the circuits, which we kind of need to get the stuff to get them all going. Instead of handcrafting everything, I can see us putting a few of these down, so maybe I'll include those as well. And I don't know that we're going to need this because with everyone handcrafting science, like we talked about a couple of days ago, I don't think we'll need this until we don't need this because we'll just build the red science array. Okay. So I think that's it, and I think 45 minutes is enough for tonight. Unless anyone else has any other sort of requests. Ooh, that's broken. I got a lot of broken blueprints here from 0.16. I need to get rid of those. Unless anyone has any other ideas or requests, I think I will we'll end the stream here. Oh, you want to do a sneak peek? Okay. I'm going to have to close Factorio to change out my mods, so give me a minute here to do that, and then the screen will be right back on. So my sneak preview is, or the series that I'm sneak previewing is the production scrap mod. Yeah, I could probably gather a few of those. If most of you probably remember, a few months ago, before 0.17 dropped, Catherine and Avon started a production scrap mod game. I liked the concept of the mod, the idea of the mod, so I decided that I wrote it down as a future game for me to play. And so I started playing this a few days ago, before I decided to actually start streaming. And then when I thought about streaming, I was like, well, I could start over. Or I could just pick it up where I'm at, because I'm at a very good point here, in that I just started building them all, and I just started laying out the bus. So a quick tour of what I have is I have a bunch of missing radars, but other than that, I have a small amount of smelting going on here and here. A small green circuit's already started. A mull started. A little bit of steel being made there off of the line. And kind of more importantly, I guess, I have some production scrap items being belted out of the mall. If any of you don't remember this mod, what happens with this mod is every sort of craft has the chance of also producing a piece of scrap. So, and the default is 6%, and that's where I've left it there. So if you produce a gear, you have a 6% chance of producing a piece of iron scrap. If you produce a copper cable, you have a 6% chance of producing a piece of copper scrap. If you produce a belt, you have a 6% chance of producing a broken belt. All of this broken stuff, broken inserters, and broken circuits, you want to send back to a processing area for them to be sort of recycled and put back into use another way. And there's the electronic circuits, the broken electronic circuits. The other thing that's a interesting piece to this add-on is that when you smelt, you can also produce the iron scrap, the copper scrap, etc. So as you can see, there's two result boxes here. So if I were smelting copper right now, you will see little pieces of copper scrap coming out. So what I'm doing is simply just using a filter inserter to filter those pieces out and send them into this right now temporary circular nightmare, where the scrap inserters are getting stored, the scrap belts are getting stored, the scrap circuits are getting stored, but the scrap iron plates and the scrap copper plates can actually be recycled into workable plates. Now, of course, the recycling of the scrap plates can sometimes produce more scrap plates. So here I have them being filtered out once again and being shipped back down, and they're filtered out here as well, and being shipped back down into this array. So eventually you can process all of these scrap components. And steel, there's also scrap steel that I have some of that can also be resmelted into more steel, more working steel. So there are the other components besides the metal plates. Those have to be recycled in a chemical plant, and I can show a little bit of that here. If I show disabled, these require sulfuric acid and water, as well as that scrap piece, in order to break down the belt into scrap iron plates that will then get bussed back into this these smelting arrays that I was standing in front of here. Same thing with inserters. They get turned into iron plates and circuits, and then you have to process the circuits, which then output iron plates and copper plates, scraps. So you kind of, some of it's kind of sort of circular, and some of it's pretty kind of straightforward. So that's kind of where I have this concept of the circular thing here, that so that everything can kind of get put into, eventually this will be expanded into a large processing area of somewhere, and everything will eventually be circulated through and filter inserted into the array that processes that item, and then the array outputs the stuff back into those belts, because a lot of it need to get processed some more in a chemical plant, or it'll need to come back to these arrays and get re-smelted into actual plates. So that's the part kind of where Catherine and Avon left off on their series, was they were just kind of getting to that point, and I'd like to kind of take it to the end, to the max, and actually make everything, process everything, and actually get to launching a rocket. It was, I was disappointed when, I was sort of disappointed when 0.17 dropped, because their series ended because of that, because all the mods are broken for 0.17. So they couldn't resume it for a time, at least, after. And by that time, the sort of momentum had passed, in my mind, at least, or my assumption, at least. So so I just kind of wanted to do this myself, and I didn't get a chance before 0.16 ended, and so I thought, well, I'll wait until the mods are good, and then I'll start it sometime in 0.17. So I think that's the general overview of the mod. Everything, if not everything, almost everything outputs some sort of scrap. Science outputs scrap. Even iron sticks output scrap. Boxes. The funny thing here is wooden boxes and wooden power poles output wood. So you get a little bit of your wood back, and which is kind of funny in a way, or at least to me, because you get a little bit of the wood back, so you almost get a little bit of sometimes free materials out of this, but for that one it's kind of understandable. Oh, and I noticed too that the higher level, or like the higher level inserters, and I'm assuming also the higher level belts, as well as the undergrounds and splitters, return a higher percentage of scrap chance. So I'm going to really be processing a lot of these materials as time goes by. Now I'm using nanobots, and nanobots obviously isn't tied into this mod, so producing nanobots materials won't produce scrap, but I like nanobots. So and I don't like building sort of the repeated stuff like smelting array after smelting array. That just gets kind of boring to me, so I like to have robots to do it for me. And that's the other piece to this series that I'm kind of planning on. Some of the sort of common Factorio stuff, building smelting arrays, setting up mining fields, things like that, I probably will do some or all of that off camera, because anybody who's familiar with Factorio is way familiar with those aspects of the game, and I wanted to kind of make the on-camera stuff be focused more on the mod itself, to kind of be a bit of a mod feature, but not to an extreme level or anything, but just kind of be more of a feature on the mod. The other thing I should point out is that I do have very frequent, very rich, or at least fairly frequent, fairly rich, and fairly large resource plots. And that's just because I also didn't want to spend a bunch of time on camera setting up rail networks. I want to focus on the mod. So that's my sort of plan for this. So hopefully I will start this. With the MMO on Saturday, I may or may not stream on Sunday. So it may actually be next Tuesday before I get to. Yeah, take an hour. So it may be next Tuesday before I actually get to this series. It'll just depend on kind of how Saturday goes and how Sunday goes. So we'll see on that. I'll post an event on my Twitch, and I'll make an announcement when I go live on Sunday. It would be the same, about the same time of evening. So keep an eye out if you're interested. Otherwise, what's that, Sydney? Yeah, that's what I didn't want to take, especially because I'm only going to stream for an hour at a time. I didn't want to take a whole hour to set up a mining outpost and a train station for it, and have to cart everything, and do all that, and then that's an hour, and we just wasted a whole stream session. So that's why I wanted to kind of do the sort of common Factorio stuff off camera, or save that for a more vanilla featured series, and do the mod specific stuff on camera, just to keep the interest moving and keep the process, the game moving. So with that, I think we'll end. Thanks everyone for coming, and I'll see you next time. Bye.